So we have a marble case, as I said before. We are working on a marble company. We have some orders from Canada. We need to prepare the product and send it to shipyard in Istanbul. Then we received a phone call at 45 past 1, and on the phone the logistics company says that the truck broke down at 12:30. The driver tried to solve it for 1 hour, and after that he decided that he couldn't solve. So they are calling us because this is the situation. So now I asked you to think about intelligence phase, design phase, and the choice phase. Now let's talk about the intelligence phase. The problem here is the truck is broken down. Okay, that's okay, no problem. But what is the real problem? The real problem is that you have a ship to catch, and can you catch it or not? So you need information. When does this ship move? And when you make a search on it, you can easily see that, for example, it moves at 3. So you have then, of course, this is not a data in our case, but when you evaluate the situation as a manager, you need this data. This is a data. When does this ship move? You get it from somewhere. You ask it, you have it on your software, etc. Then you start to analyze the situation again, because you have nearly 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, 15 minutes, and probably you can miss the ship. Now what you do as a manager? What is your options? Let's think about it. So what I want to mention here in intelligence phase is that as a manager, the intelligence phase is triggered when the phone call comes. In this case, it is like that. It is not like there is a system monitoring the situation and warning you about the problem. If the company, the logistic company, doesn't want to call you for 1 more hours, maybe still you will not be aware of the situation because you didn't receive the phone call. Or if your phone is broken down, maybe you cannot receive the call and you don't know even what is going on. You don't know there's a problem like this. Okay? So intelligence phase, as I said before, intelligence phase is about monitoring the real life and searching for problems. When I say searching for problems, we don't try to create problems. We try to detect the problems before they occur or as soon as they occur. So what can be an alternative to this scenario? It could be like you can choose a logistics company which has a GPS system on it, so that when the car takes the marble and goes through the shipyard, some people on your team can detect its position. And there are even some warning systems, like if a car stops for 5 minutes, it warns you. You don't need to monitor everything. So if you had something like this, if you worked with a company using GPS systems, maybe you could understand the problem 1 hour earlier. And this could be another world, because your potential actions, your alternatives could be much more. But since in the intelligence phase, this is a routine operation, as I know, but if you have systems to monitor this everyday operations, you can detect the problems earlier. And detecting them earlier means you have more alternatives or more time to think about your alternatives. So here in the design phase, okay, we understand that we have 1 hour and 15 minutes to ship movement. So what is your alternatives? You search for them. Just think about them and we can discuss. For example, you may try to find a new truck. You can tell the logistics company, okay, now let's bring another truck and get my marbles to the shipyard. You can say this. This is an alternative. But the data in the intelligence phase is important here because you have 1 hour and 15 minutes to ship. So even if the logistics company has an available truck, how long does it take for this truck to go to the broken down truck? And how long does it take to get the marbles to the new one? And how long does it take to reach to the shipyard? So you must have a calculation about them. Okay? When you want to evaluate this alternative, you must think about them. But most probably, if you had this problem information 1 hour earlier, finding a new truck could be a good could solve the problem, could be a good alternative, because you had then you would have 2 more hours, so you can easily direct a new truck and reach to the destination. But now most probably it is not possible. You can ask the ship to wait for the truck. Okay, this is an alternative. But what will be the cost of delaying the ship? Okay, you ask the ship to wait for 1 more hour. Then you must consider what will be the cost, because the ships are paying for the shipyards for the time they spent there. So you ask them to wait for 1 more hour, so there must be a cost for it. You must learn this cost. And you must also think about the first alternative, finding a new truck, because even if the ship waits for another hour, you still need to find a new truck. So you send the truck and bring the marbles to the shipyard. Maybe another alternative is like sending the marble with the next ship. It can be an option. Then you must know when is the next ship. There's a data here. This is also a data. And you must also compare it with your due date, because if the next ship is next week, maybe you cannot catch your due date. You will be late for the customer and you don't want it to happen. Okay? So you need to compare it with your due date. And you must also compare it with the cost of being late. In some agreements, being late is punished with a very high amount of money. In some of them, it is not like that, but in some sensitive cases, if you are late to bring your products, then there will be lots of punishments, money. You must pay lots of money out of it. So you need this data also to evaluate the alternatives. Or another alternative can be like sending it by plane. So this time you must consider what is the next, when is the next plane, and how much does it cost. You need these data to compare the alternatives. So some of the alternatives we have lots of alternatives here, 4 alternatives, but I showed only 3 of them. Delaying the ship, because finding a new track is not a good alternative, we eliminated it. Sending it by the next ship, the alternative B, and alternative C, sending by plane. So you need to find this data I showed here by questions, and you need to bring the data together, make some calculations, and see what will be the result of selecting this alternative. So in alternative A, delaying the ship alternative, you must look at the costs, because you delay the ship for 1 or 2 hours, so most probably it will not affect your due date. So you must only focus on the costs. But when you consider alternative B, sending it by the next ship, then depending on the time of the next ship, you can be late. So if in case of being late, you must search for the monetary value of being late, and also you must look for customer relations. For example, if this company is very important for you, and even if they didn't put any punishment for being late, you don't want to be late for this company. Maybe you don't want to earn much money in the first order, because maybe you believe that in the future you will make lots of money out of this customer. You don't want to lose the customer. So you must also consider the customer relations part. And when you send it by plane, it is faster than the ship, so maybe you will not be late. This time also you must consider the cost only. And for example, you make the calculations and you select alternative C, then you buy the tickets and send the marble by ship. You do the operation. This is called the implementation phase. So once more, I want to repeat, in the intelligence phase, we scan the environment, we try to understand the real world, and we try to define problems. Okay? So intelligence phase is about scanning and defining the problem. The design phase is about finding, developing, and analyzing possible courses of action, possible alternative ways. Here, maybe you need to build a model. In some cases, in some type of problems, like the one we had see here in this case, the alternatives are distinct. They are alternative A, B, C, D. Okay? But in some other cases, the decision can be a value of a continuing number. So, for example, the number of product A to produce, number of product B to produce. This can be your alternative. So there can be unlimited number of alternatives, because there can be lots of different production plans. In this kind of problems, you build a mathematical model for your problem. And in the search phase, you search for the potential outcome of the alternatives. You can look at the alternative from cost perspective, for customer relations perspective, for many other perspectives. And these perspectives is also a part of your decision-making process. For example, if a manager does not care about customer relations, this is something about his way of doing business, so it directly affects the choice phase and it affects its decisions. And in the implementation phase, I want to talk about, especially in some kind of decisions, for example, in decisions about how people will make their jobs, their functionalities, or the process. It is very hard to implement the decision, because people may resist to change. So in some cases, implementation phase can be the hardest one. It can, people may resist it, so you must be very careful about managing the change in your company. But in some cases, for example, in the marble case, you give the decision like sending the marble by plane. The operation, the implementation is only about buying some tickets and sending trucks to the airport. That's so easy. But in some other cases, it is not like that. What I want to mention here is we have 4 stages. We consciously or subconsciously give these decisions. And in corporate world, we need data in different stages. In the marble case, we talked about it. And the data we need is generally stored in management information systems or the information systems in general. So we give decisions depending on or using the data in information systems, stored in information systems. Once more, I want to show you this figure. We start with data, but this data is not a standalone entity. It is stored in information systems, and they are in a database. We get this data from database, apply the analytics, and then managers can make some human intervention, so they get the result of the analytics and come up with a decision. And in the autonomous systems, the decisions are directly applied. They are directly applied to the real world, like autonomous cars or Amazon Prime. You give the package, you give the destination, it goes by itself. So it decides which route to go and it applies it. So it is how today's autonomous vehicles or autonomous systems work.